Hey everybody, good morning. It's Dr. Arafid from Vet Triage. October 5th, Saturday, 8:16 a.m. Pacific time. We are on the next journal. We are on JAVMA, May of 2015, and we're going to discuss this article, What's in Pet Food. This is a very popular topic, especially these days. The last 10 years have been inundated with an explosion of new dog food and cat food companies in the market that are appealing to pet owners, especially younger generation, that are really aware and conscientious of what they're feeding their pets. So a lot of the old school mentalities of pet foods have been challenged even further because the consumer requires better products. So this article is by Greg Cima. Tests find differences between foods and labels. So let's get right into it. They mention here about 40% of dog and cat foods tested in a recent study may have contained meats different from those listed on the product labels. A study showed that of 52 wet and dry foods and treats, 13 of those products contained meats from species that were not listed on the label. 4 of those products lacked one or more of the meats listed on the label, and 3 had both issues. So this all started in 2013 in Europe, where they found in human products, throughout 27 countries, horse DNA was found in 5% of products labeled as containing beef, according to the European Commission. So that started the search for other food products that are mislabeled. In 2012, in Pet Food Industry, Laura K. Alfred wrote that mislabeling usually is a result of unintended mistakes, from formulation mistakes or mislabeling by suppliers. She wrote an article that indicates ELISA's enzyme-linked immunosorbent assays found that 10 of 21 commercial dog foods contained species that were not declared on the label or missing species that were declared. That's like 50% of the products. Mislabeling can not only result from sloppy misoperations, but also because of fraud. And this is from John W. Spink, the director of the Food Fraud Initiative in Michigan State University. With a lot of fraud, no one gets sick, and he makes it clear that food and safety defense systems aim to catch harmful food products, catch illnesses or deaths. And so even though there may be fraud with mislabeling, nobody really gets sick from it. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, focuses resources first on concerns of public and animal health, including label verification. Undeclared ingredients can cause alert allergies, but the absence of a listed ingredient is also a problem. In another study, this was in Italy and Belgium, they found that ingredients from unexpected species were in 10 of 12 dry, limited antigen canine diets. So if you have a dog with food sensitivity, food allergies, which is very common, especially to the more common proteins like beef and chicken, because that's in most products. And so that's what your dog will eventually build an intolerance towards after years of eating the same thing over and over again. Their body will say that the body will identify beef and chicken as being foreign. And so it'll attack it like you would attack an infection. And that's where dietary allergies come from. If you have a diet that's supposed to be limited antigen, meaning novel protein diet, so a protein that is new to the pet, meaning usually not chicken or not beef, it has to have what it says it has. Otherwise, it's not going to help the dog with their food allergies. So this is a big deal, that in 10 of 12 dry limited antigen dog foods, they found the presence of undeclared species of birds, fish, and mammals. And 10 of the diets were unsuitable for use in diagnostic food elimination trials. Now, this was a study from authors in Italy and Belgium, and so it's possible that maybe the standards in the US are higher, but that's very scary. FDA officials are using DNA barcoding technology. This examines standardized gene regions for species identification, and they want to identify species in foods, particularly seafoods, and are interested in validating labeled contents of foods as this technology becomes more accessible. And that, of course, makes sense. Here is a pretty telling chart, and if you want to pause it there and take a look at that, it mentions here that in 52 dog and cat foods looking for potential mislabeling, no problem was found in 30 of them. In about 11 or 12 of them, the meat species found in the food were not on the label. In under 5 of them, meat species were on the label but not found in the food. And about 3 or 4 of them had both problems, and maybe one or two of them had unidentified meat ingredients. That's crazy. Previous DNA testing on 174 lots of fish from April 2012 to September 2013 found that 15% were mislabeled. During an investigation into dog and cat illnesses, the FDA found no tilapia in 2 jerky type treats that were labeled as containing fish. Now that's a bit weird because tilapia is a fish, but there are many fish out there, so I'm not sure why they're specifying just testing for tilapia. The agency tests cattle foods for the presence of mammalian protein as part of its efforts to prevent infection with bovine spongiform encephalopathy. So for those who don't remember, bovine spongiform encephalopathy was also mad cow disease, and it was caused by prions. Prions are really crazy because they're not really alive organisms, but they act like protein viruses. So it's a protein, and it replicates like a virus, although it's not technically speaking a virus. It's technically dead. But prions were the result of feeding cows, and that, of course, is unnatural, and then developed these toxic proteins that caused a major issue. I think it started in the UK, and I think we prevented it from coming into the States, although maybe it was like one report. I don't remember. But bovine means cow, spongiform means sponge-like, so it creates holes in the brains of the affected cattle, and you can see that on MRI. And encephalopathy is a general term meaning brain disease. In 2011, Government Accountability Office reported in part that globalization is complicating the FDA's task of ensuring safety by increasing the variety, complexity, and volume of imported food and drugs, and more complex supply chains are increasing the difficulty of tracing ingredients to their sources. PCR assays, so PCR is polymerase chain reaction assays, are qualitative, meaning they tell you whether or not something is in or not in a food, but it doesn't tell you amount. Minute amounts of cross-contamination during production, for example, might be detected by assays, but may not be concerning. PCR assay used in a study could detect meat species found in 1 to 5% of each sample, depending on the product and species, and they noted that the meat species listed at the top of the ingredients list should be present at far higher concentration. So classically, when you look at a dog food or a cat food label, the first protein they mention should be the one in the highest quantities. And then subsequent proteins they mention in the label, if there are any, should be in lesser amounts. So, for example, beef needs to be only 3% of a dog or cat food in order for it to be labeled with beef to comply with AAFCO rules. You can go to AAFCO.org to learn more about them, but they set the minimum standards needed for diets. In some instances, beef may actually make up 5% of a sample to be detected. Assays had a 1% minimum detection for turkey, and it can detect between 1 and 5% of turkey. As for species found in the food but not in the labels, they said that tests could have detected lower amounts of animal digests added without need for species identification. Here's another chart that you can look at. Boom. Potential mislabeling by food type. So this looks like this looks like maybe 25 different foods, I suppose, maybe 30. But dry food mislabeled was made up 2 of these of the study. Treats that were mislabeled make up 6. Wet food that were mislabeled were at 8 of the products. So these are mislabeled in that there were ingredients added that were not on the label. Missing ingredients were found in 2 or 3 of these. It looks like 2 of the diets studied, and for treats, and then for wet food, it was 6 of them that had missing ingredients. This is crazy. And then a small subset of wet foods were undetermined. Yikes. They also note that DNA can be destroyed during the cooking process, which can interfere with the study results. Stan Cook, who is the chair of the Pet Food Committee of AFCO, expects increased surveillance to protect consumers, but he said that the extent of product mislabeling is difficult to determine. State laws include provisions to protect against mislabeled products, and states that follow the AFCO model give control officials authority to review production records from feed producers, stop the sale of mislabeled items, and seek civil penalties. The FDA has been implementing mandatory health-related preventative controls under the Food Safety and Modernization Act. Food makers also can take direct efforts against fraud by suppliers by testing for contamination. And they end this article by saying that retailers and sellers often set higher product standards than do regulations. And that's one of the biggest issues that I've had with organizations like AFCO, for example. It's not their fault. They set the minimum standard, but it's the minimum standard. And should the minimum standard be what we aim to achieve, there has to be some kind of minimum, right, to create some sort of standardization across the board. But with these newer dog food products that have come out, they tend to set higher expectations than the regulations require, which is fine. If the regulations require you to have, whatever it was, 3% of beef in the dog food to consider it made with beef, and these other companies want to have 5, 10, 20, 30% beef, that, as far as I can tell, is better for the dog. So that works. The retail food industries are starting to implement countermeasures to not only detect mislabeled foods, but also vulnerabilities to fraud. So that is the article for today. Very popular these days because a lot of folks are willing to spend the extra money to have better dog and cat food for their pets. So hopefully this is moving in the right direction. I want to give a shout out to the Lucy Pet Foundation because they have their own lab. I work with them with volunteer efforts for vaccine clinics and spay-neuter clinics, and they are adamant that their products contain what they claim to contain. And so companies like that are going to continuously shape the food industry for pets. Old school companies like Hills, Iams, Eukanuba, they've been raising their standards as well. And it's probably in response to consumers being more educated on what they want to feed their pets. They are more aware, conscientious about byproducts and processed foods and on fraud or whatever else, contamination. So other companies, and of course, there's also a desire for more research these days too. People want to know the facts. They want to know what studies show X, Y, and Z. So even the old school companies that have been ruling the landscape forever now have to raise their standards. Thanks for everybody who watches this on the playback, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.